Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Matt Bakhoum, Senior Technical Advisor for Style3D USA. Today, we're going to be diving into Style3D version 8, and I'm excited to walk you through everything that's new. This update brings stronger realism, better efficiency, and smarter production tools, all designed to speed up workflows and improve accuracy. As we go through this presentation, the Style3D team will be answering questions live in the chat, so feel free to drop them in at any time. We'll also be setting aside a few minutes at the end for any final questions if needed. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the Style3D YouTube channel for more updates, tutorials, and deep dives into our latest features. Also follow the link in the description to set up a demo or access a free trial license of Style3D Studio. Let's get started. First up, let's talk about UI and workflow improvements. The new refreshed interface features updated colors, icons, and a more streamlined layout. Beyond the key visuals, some updates improve navigation, speed up workflows, and make tools more intuitive. Okay, we'll resume our presentation on Style3D version 8. We just went over UI and UX updates. Now we're going to talk about the new learning path in Style3D. Now, when you hover your mouse over an icon, you'll get tooltips to see what a specific property is, to get a description of what that property is. Also, when you hover over an individual tool, you'll also get a tooltip indicating what that function is to do, and if there's a shortcut associated with it, what it is. The lower side of the workspace, you'll also see that you have in the status bar links now that take you directly to the help pages within Style3D's help documentation. This is a great quick reference for any function in Style3D Studio. If you're a new user or if you've been using Studio since the beginning, this is a great way to get access to the documentation that exists on our cloud. We streamlined the render workflow in version 7.2, and in V8, we made the rendering interface adaptive, allowing you to resize each pane, especially useful for smaller screens. We'll just see here some adjustments that we make to the rendering layout. We can also utilize the most recent rendering setting when we're using our render job. So if we start a new job, we can use the last used settings from our last project by clicking this new icon, and that'll load up the most recently used render options. Super useful for quickly rendering without having to reset up your projects every time. Fabric previews have seen an update. Before, you could only generate one fabric preview image for a fabric. Now you can generate multiple fabric preview images when a fabric is saved. You can now select the map size, resolution, and number of previews. You can also customize these views to show the front or back of a fabric or the side, and all these tiles will appear in the preview window when you hover over a fabric. So you can see here we've created 3 different views. We're going to now set one of these to the back view so you can show the front and back of materials, which was not possible. You can change the layout, the size, and the scale of any of these previews. And again, when you save this or when you view this in your library, you'll have all 3 of those previews available to you. So now we can hover over this fabric and you'll see all of the views. So super useful for fabric management. We've improved localized dragging. You've been able to drag within 3D for a while now. Now we've improved the way that you can interact with it. So now you can actually change the pointer size when you click and drag, either from a fine point to a medium-sized point or a larger point. We've also added symmetry to these options so that when you make changes to these dragging features across a symmetric garment, you can do them on both sides. You also have quick access to pinning within this feature as well. The avatar property editor has been streamlined as well. Now properties within the avatar editor, within the property editor for the avatar have been split into type, materials, and other to further organize the options that are in there and make them easier to find. You can also find control elements for things like gestures, poses, and expressions for assets that are all stored in your local library of assets. Next up, we've made improvements to VFX workflows. Rendering improvements take material realism to the next level. In Studio version 8, light interacts more naturally with fabrics. Reflections are more accurate, and multi-layered materials have better control. These upgrades make garments look more lifelike straight out of the render engine. We've enhanced visual effects to better handle transparency and translucency, making materials look even more realistic. Transparency allows light to pass through without distortion, while translucency scatters light within the fabric, creating a softer, more natural effect. With the new advanced parameters, you can fine-tune side translucency and immediately see the difference in renders, giving you greater control over light diffusion and for more lifelike visualizations. And here you can see this in use using our real-time ray tracing. You can see the softer, much more natural effect to a translucent material. The laser frequency update introduces more control over the different diffraction effects, creating surfaces that shift and shimmer, kind of like a DVD or holographic material like you see here. This new parameter allows you to fine-tune the density and distribution of these shifting colors, from a smooth gradient to tightly packed wave-like distortions. The smooth on the left, tightly packed on the right with a color frequency, color frequency of 10. Anisotropy. The new anisotropic reflection effects now enhance how light interacts with fabrics, especially those with directional grain like silk, satin, or other brushed metals. Unlike standard reflections, which appear uniform, anisotropic materials reflect light differently based on their weave direction, creating a more natural sheen. With V8, you can now control glossiness separately for the warp and weft directions, allowing for a more realistic representation of directional highlights and making fabrics appear even more true to life in renders. We've expanded the reflection intensity range, giving you more flexibility when adjusting gloss levels on fabrics, like with this jacket here. You can now push the reflections even further, making materials like this down jacket, coated fabrics, and other high shine synthetics appear even more polished and real. You can see the difference between what we were able to achieve before and what it looks like now in V8. Multi-layer material controls have now been enhanced, giving you more flexibility in how layers interact with the main fabric. Layers can now be placed on any part of the material, including the side, allowing for more detailed and realistic composition. You can see here we're setting the front, back, and side properties all differently. You can also have precise control over layer repetition and offset. So this graphic element that we've got here can be spaced out, and we can fine-tune the pattern placement, adjust its repeat, and customize the material effect even further. Here we can adjust the spacing and even the offset from row to row. So if you want to create a half step or quarter step repeat, you're able to do so from this interface directly. Really great update. Bloom, one of the physical camera effects that was introduced in 7.2, seen an improvement. The bloom effect in V8 has been upgraded to provide more control over how light interacts with bright surfaces. This enhancement allows you to adjust the intensity and radius, making it easier to create a soft glow around highlights for a more cinematic and realistic look. Let me go back over that so you can see it again. By fine-tuning bloom settings, you can amplify the way light scatters off of reflective materials, adding a layer of depth and richness to rendered fabrics without overexposing details. We'll just see here some of those control again. Beautiful effect. Fur rendering has been greatly improved directly in ray tracing. Previously, fur was available. We can render furs in ray tracing. That was enabled in version 7.2. They've been further improved. Now we have much greater rendering of shadows for furs. Shadows are obviously an incredibly important component to rendering, and being able to represent those beautifully right out of the rendering engine built into Style3D Studio is super powerful. So again, without doing additional post-processing, fur renders that are created in Studio look absolutely beautiful now. Here's a great example. Keep in mind, this is a live YouTube stream. This video is probably not going to do this justice, but yeah, if you try it out, you'll see huge improvement to the way that fur effects have been are working in Studio. And again, even in this visual, you can see a big change in the way shadows and highlights are represented across the two. Garment shaping and structure tools have been enhanced to give more precise control over fabric behavior, reinforcement, and simulation accuracy. Soft drapes structured garments, trims, and hardware have all respond more naturally in V8. The strengthen, solidify, and subdivision properties are now their own tools with controls over shrinkage in one direction or another. In this example, we can see that we're changing the warp and weft stretch amounts on one side or the other of this pattern piece. So you can see when we add high weft and then a high warp stretch, when we run the simulation, we can see exactly what this effect does to the fabric. And you can see here that this is a realistic effect, simulating the shrink in one grain direction or another. This is another common issue where you have an unwanted bump in the pattern, usually around a dart. This can be handled using the flatten brush. And there are new controls for how this function can be used. Again, it, like other features, can support symmetry if you would like it to, or it can cross over seam lines, but here we can just airbrush over an area and reduce that unwanted bump in the fabric. Sometimes we do want detail where it's not added, and for areas like this product where we have additional detail that we want represented, but we don't want to subdivide the entire garment and slow down our simulation, we can subdivide just a portion by painting on the area across the seam line even where we want additional detail so that it can simulate correctly. The solidification brush is also being used here as well, and here we're just going to apply solidify in the 2D window. That allows us to give us really precise control over where we want to solidify a portion of this bow and leave the other side the way it was. Strengthen is another property, again, that reinforces pieces. This can be painted on, and just like the other features, we can paint them on and tell them to or not to paint over the seam line. So if I click this cross sew line feature, when I paint, it will paint over adjacent polygons as well. Super useful, super helpful for being able to make changes in the 2D or in the 3D workspace if you need to. Extra solidification, relevant for bag makers and other accessory makers. Here we have this example. In the past, even the highest value you could set for solidification, these pieces would kind of collapse under any amount of, under enough load. Now we've added this extra solidify feature that makes these pieces extra rigid. So now they'll resist even the strongest loads. Pretty cool. New down effects. We can now set custom down amounts, down types in this this window. Previously, there were only a few presets. Now you can set your own thickness and pressure amounts to simulate downfill or fiber fill in between your pieces. And again, we can come in here and adjust these properties and see how that affects the filling of that pattern. Here, what we can do is we can turn on the divided pattern, a feature that we're going to cover in the next section. But here we can actually set different pressure amounts for different sections of the pattern. So here, for this last section, I can actually set it to be filled less than the rest. This allows you to make corrections in the way that you fill an actual product without having to separate the pattern into multiple pieces in a way that you wouldn't in your real pattern. So having this extra layer of control is super useful. This dovetails beautifully with this next feature, localized physical property settings. It's the same tool. This just allows you to draw a line that spans across the piece. And then you can turn on this divided pattern function and it will treat that division line as if it's a separate piece, meaning you can assign different properties on one side of that line or another. You can add strengthen or solidify or freezing to just parts of your pieces now, rather than having to apply them to the entire piece. This is a big change in what you're able to do with your pattern pieces. And again, allows you to make these changes without having to make pattern adjustments that either break pattern making rules or otherwise destroy a pattern in a way that you would never do in production. Again, really great update for this one. Great flattening features have been introduced in Style3D version 8. We can now import OBJ and FBX assets and flatten them into patterns. If you have an OBJ set of surfaces that can be imported as a garment, and you can flatten those as patterns, you can take a look at this example where we're going to load an OBJ as a garment, and the system will automatically extract all of those surfaces as individual flat 2D pieces. Great for importing a 3D asset that came from another 3D CAD system. Or if you're working with modeled 3D assets and you have a bag or something else that was created in a software like Rhino or Blender, you can import that object as an FBX, and you can also, again, convert that into a pattern. The system will flatten all of its surfaces into individual flat pieces so that you can then redrape them inside of Style3D Studio. A really powerful set of features that allow you to take 3D assets and convert them back into 2D pieces so that you can simulate them inside of Studio. Hard trims collisions. This is a really cool one. In the past, when we had trims, we had to kind of cheat by stitching the fabric to the edge of trims. Now we've improved it so that the interaction between the fabric and this hardware is realistic. It actually loops through the plastic rather than having to be sewn on. We've also made improvements to hardware trim to not only have mass, but they can also collide with one another just like fabric does. This is really great because, again, it means that when we simulate something like a chain, it behaves in a much more realistic way where the chain drops and loops and can be dragged just like a real chain versus being treated like a single piece of fabric that just moves unrealistically like a bag strap, basically. Pattern and style adjustments have been made in version Style3D 8. Pattern tools have been refined to speed up workflows, simplify grading, and make pattern editing more precise. Seam allowances, dart manipulation, and shape adjustments now require fewer manual tweaks, streamlining the production process. Default notch types. You can now set a default notch type and have that be your default from now on. Whenever you set your default, any notch you create will take on the properties of the default that you've established. And that can be set here in your user settings under default values. You can see slit, V, T, U, and box notches can all be selected, and there are properties for the depth, dimension, and angle of each of those. A nice quality of life improvement. Grading order, another quality of life improvement. Previously, the list of grading sizes that you established was rigid. So if you wanted to add a smaller size, it was impossible without renaming the entire list. Now we can establish whatever size list we want. We can type in the names in whatever order we want. We can introduce a new size to this table at any time, and we can reorder the grade table to show whatever order we want. And of course, we still have really great grading functions. We'll skip that just a little bit. And you can see here as we make adjustments to this grading table, I can drag a size up in the list to reorder it. This is also useful for when you're using the garment browser because you're changing the order of the sizes here. If you wanted to see two sizes side by side in the garment browser, you can just list them side by side in this table. And now you can see what your XL garment on your XL avatar looks like sitting next to your size small garment on your size small avatar. And of course, in this view, you can turn on tension mapping and check your sizing. But a really nice set of features related to grading introduced in version 8. Grading tables can also now be utilized inside of Style3D. And these are importable through DXF. Dart tools have been introduced in version 8. A number of very exciting dart functions specifically. So now we can actually choose the direction of the dart to go inside A, side B, or both, and that will change the seam allowance excess that's created at the seam edge there. You can also have control, as you did before, over the seam shape that extends beyond the shape perimeter of the pattern piece itself. Dart objects are now editable components, so you can highlight them and then right click on them and make adjustments to them rather than just being kind of simple 2D lines in the edge of the pattern. Dart rotation, this is a really great feature and one that was requested, heavily requested. Not only can you now rotate darts, but you can choose exactly where and how much to distribute. So I can establish a single slit line or slash line to indicate where I want the new dart to be distributed to. I can set an absolute value or a ratio, and I can start typing in a specific amount or use the arrows to smoothly distribute more and more of the dart from one side to the other. Not only can this be done with a single slash point, but we can introduce multiple slash and spread points. So now when we do this, we can actually set the distribution amounts separately for each of those slash lines. When we select the unequal dart property here, you can see edge 0 and edge 1 can be set to different values. And the more of these you create, the more control you have over how much of the new dart amount is distributed to each of those lines. Again, a very powerful set of functions, and this makes the 2D set of functionality within Style3D even more complete, not just for design, but now specifically for pattern making, pattern development, technical design workflows. This is being more and more useful as Style3D's tools continue to develop. Guidelines have been improved in version 8. Now when we introduce the rulers, obviously we can pull out guidelines. We were able to do X and Y guidelines before. Now we have additional control for these. We can also lock a guideline. So as we create a guideline across a line or parallel to one of these axes, we can lock it so that that guideline is no longer editable. It can still be selectable, and it will be a snappable object. So again, really useful for drafting workflows where you're trying to develop new patterns. Also, when you're making adjustments to the pattern itself, here I'm locking. Here, when you make adjustments to the pattern itself, you'll see new useful guidelines appear as well to help you make quick and precise adjustments to your pattern lines without having to rely on very precise value entry in the fields there. The round corner tool allows you to audit the shape of two lines against one another without having to walk the line. So here we can check the shape of this armhole by comparing the front and back armhole shape, and we can make changes to the shape of the referenced line by adjusting these control points, and we can actually send those adjustments back to the back piece. So as we make these changes to the curvature of the shape to correct it, we can press enter or double click to finish and apply that change to the new piece. Super useful tool. You no longer have to walk your pieces or move them into place to do this. You can keep your pieces fully in their existing position, make these changes, and not have to worry about additional steps. Really, really great feature. The edit corner tool now has a bunch of new shapes. We can basically create any new shape, any corner shape using this feature. Another set of new controls for how to change the shape, size, radius, distance, offset, arc length, all sorts of different controls for the shape, basically, of these curves that we can control within this dialog box. If I jump ahead a little bit, you can see that we can do this as well for multiple points all at once. We can do this actually for all points of a square, and this is another method for creating basically any complicated pattern shape. And I say pattern, I mean visual pattern, not 2D piece. But we can create any design basically using this this new interface in the round corner functions, the edit corners functions. Unequal seam allowance amounts. We can now define different seam allowance amounts for the start and end of a line, allowing you to enable variable seam allowance amounts. So here we can say what the seam allowance amount is for the entire part of the pattern that we've selected, but we can also tick unequal length, unequal width rather, and then change the starting or end width to be different from one another. That way you can change again. One side can be longer, one side can be shorter. Lots of cases where uneven seam allowance can be utilized. Again, what we're doing here is continuing to improve our 2D pattern development production facing edits. We want this to be a full-featured 2D production workspace as well. So continuing to improve more and more workflows centered around 2D in production continues to be a focus of Style3D in version 8, and it will continue into our upcoming versions as well. Precision distance snapping was a new feature that was introduced as well. This is another length measurement aid. It's called quantitative adsorption inside of the interface. What this does is I can set a specific distance, And now whenever I hover my mouse onto a line, it will give me a snap point that distance away from my reference. So now when I'm drafting, I have these immediate snap points that pop up anytime I'm drafting that are a given distance, a distance that I've defined away from any point. This is, again, super powerful for drafting workflows, enabling you to build using whatever drafting technique you're already familiar with, just on a digital platform. So again, traditional hand pattern drafting techniques can be utilized to develop them inside of a CAD system, like Style3D Studio. Pattern replacement has seen a major improvement. This is a feature that's existed kind of quietly inside of Style3D Studio for quite a long time. There's a pretty serious limitation with it before. If you wanted to replace a pattern by re-importing it, that was a really useful feature. It allowed you to replace just a portion of a design that was put together in 3D with a new version of it. So let's say somebody exported another V2 DXF file. You could re-import it and not have to rework your entire file. The limitation was that the number of points had to be exactly the same between your old piece and your new piece. And that wasn't always a practical way to do this. In fact, it was not always something that worked. So now what we can do is we can do this with any piece. We can replace the pattern piece with any piece, regardless of the number of points. So long as the name of those pieces match, we can update the geometry of a 2D piece with a new DXF file regardless of the shape of the piece that we're importing. Again, without getting too far into it, you can build some extremely powerful workflows using this set of functionality, and also cuts out a lot of reworking when you're trying to interact between your 3D design and other CAD tools like AccuMark or Optitex. Being able to communicate with those tools in a fluid way is really important. This is a super, super nice tool. Graphic techniques have been improved in V8 as well, a couple big ones here. Graphic techniques have been expanded with new embroidery controls, improved color extraction tools. These updates make it easier to refine design elements while keeping everything sharp and production ready. A new herringbone embroidery has been added with controls over stitch spacing, thickness, and density to allow for more realistic embroidery visuals. You can see the visuals of what are the new embroidery templates that have been added in V8. Again, you can look at this beautiful render in the ray tracing mode for this herringbone stitch. You can see also, again, we have controls over, like I said, the spacing, thickness, and density of these stitches to give your embroidery an even more polished, beautiful, realistic look. Super nice. Again, look at what was possible in version 7.2 and now what's possible in version 8. A huge improvement for embroidery users. Another feature that's seen a big improvement, it existed in Studio, but it wasn't really well used. Now it's its own dedicated feature. This is the Extract Graphics feature. This allows you to select a color range or a graphic image range, or you can eyedropper a specific color, and the system will allow you to replace that color. Now that feature has existed in Studio for a while. What's new is now we can isolate these colors and apply graphic techniques to them. So not only can we apply a new color and replace a pink with a blue if that was what we wanted, but now we can apply advanced rendering technologies to individual components. So here we can isolate just that yellow channel and we can apply a gold foil effect to it. And now we've created a really beautiful additional detail to our design. And we can do this for any of the channels that we've isolated, and we can apply different render techniques to each of them. And in the next steps, when you see what this looks like, you'll see changing colors is powerful. Being able to change individual channels with specific render technologies. This allows you to create really beautiful, stunning visuals using advanced techniques, again, without having to develop new pieces. To do this without this kind of feature, you'd have to do all sorts of piece separation, and again, in a way that wasn't realistic. This is a really simplified, beautiful, easy way of being able to apply advanced techniques to just part of your graphics. More production improvements in marker making. You can now define grading size color in the marker interface. So now when I look at the 2D snapshot for the Style3D Studio interface, I can change the color for a specific grade size. I can change the font color to red to make it even easier to see. Just a nice quality of life improvement for marker users within Style3D Studio. Fabric shrinkage can also now be displayed inside of the marker 2D snapshot. All we have to do is turn on the show shrinkage again in the 2D snapshot properties box, and you'll now see warp and weft readings for shrinkage amounts across your pieces in the marker. Very nice. Matching has also seen a big improvement. You can see what we're doing here. Lots of improvements for production again. Matching has been improved with a new UI. Again, we've improved and simplified the way that you enter values into these boxes. We've also expanded the type of matching you can do. You can now offset and angle these matching lines to account for even more complex matching scenarios. Yeah, here you can see we can change the angle. And anytime now when we move our pieces are locked to that matching orientation. So now we can't place these pieces in a way that doesn't match according to our repeat structure that's been developed here. Matching is a really powerful and obviously required workflow for a lot of different garment types. So improving this feature set has been very important to us. Avatars. Avatars now include new gestures, improved animation controls, and hair simulation. These updates enhance virtual try-ons, animation sequences, and presentations. Oops, sorry, let me go back. Here you can see several of the new hand gestures that have been added to the Style3D resource library, also accessible from within the Style3D property manager. These are all assets that live directly in your library. There are also some that are available in the cloud for you to download. We've also expanded over 20 new scenes for you to download directly from Style3D Cloud, as well as a couple new youth avatars. Here you can see these youth avatars as imported into Style3D and then rendered using Style3D iWish. Good luck telling these apart from actual photographs. Animation slicing and selection has seen huge improvements. The animation editor was already super easy to use. You basically don't have to really know much in order to work with animation. Now you can be even more selective about the animations by allowing you to mix and match animations. You can even clip and trim portions of an animation, and the system will automatically generate transition animations for you. Here's just a quick example of us doing that. So we're just going to choose a walking animation that's called standby. And you'll see that as we play this out, there's a long, about 15-second animation of walking. We don't want all 15 seconds of this animation. We only want a portion of it. So we're going to split the animation at where the playhead is, and we can now delete the remainder of that animation. The next animation in the scene is this Kung Fu stance. The system automatically blended the transition between the end of the standby pose and the beginning of the Kung Fu pose. This is a really powerful thing because normally there would be all sorts of very manual steps that a user would have to take in order to make this happen. Now, again, at the end of the Kung Fu stance, we don't want the remaining extra frames. We don't want to wait the extra 2 or 3 seconds at the end of that animation, so we can clip that as well and continue to add even more animations. And we get this option to add in a 1 second or shorter or longer automatic transition animation that gets created by Style3D automatically. Very, very useful for even beginners trying to use animation in Studio. Here you can now enable and disable individual garment components from the timeline view. So you can tick these timelines on and off. And there's now been a new option to multi-select tracks inside of the timeline view. You can hold Control or the Command button on Mac and multi-select them to delete all of these tracks at once to get rid of tracks that you no longer need. A nice quality of life improvement as well. A very nice beta feature that's been introduced in version 8 is hair simulation. In the past, when you used long hair on garments with a collar or cuff, or really anywhere where the hair could accidentally touch the garment, there was the chance that it would risk the simulation either going crazy or colliding in an unbeautiful way with the garment or with the hair. So now we've added a hair simulation so that when you're using the wind generator, and a lot of you didn't know that that existed in Studio, there is a wind generator, or in animations like this one. The animations look much more realistic and convincing because the animation includes hair. Hair now simulates just like the rest of the garment does, contributing to a much more realistic and beautiful final render. Finally, let's talk AI. AI-powered rendering in iWish now includes a more flexible interface, enhanced AI clothing refinement controls, and a PSD export for layered editing. These improvements give more control over final visuals, making it easier to create stunning production-ready images. Here we're just going to take a look at our iWish feature, and you can see how we normally do this. We start the rendering. We can send the job to AI snapshot. We select the face or import the face of the person that we want to assign. We select the scene or import the scene. And in the past, we had AI cloth refinement, and that added the extra wrinkling and imperfections to a garment. We introduced it in version 7 with just one layer of control. In 7.2, we added 2 more. Now there are a total of 5 levels of control for the AI cloth refinement and 3 different levels of control for locking elements, meaning how much do you want the AI to retouch or leave alone other things that are not the garment, like accessories, trims, bags, and things like that. Now we can send this job out to the cloud, and that job will be available to us in the cloud, where we can view our starting image, which is obviously an uncanny image, and the new photorealistic version. And of course, we can download this new PSD. I'm just going to come back to that really quickly. We can now use this PSD layer export, layered PSD file export from iWish. What this does is it allows us to mask off certain parts of the scene in a way that other AIs are not going to have any ability to do. This is a Style3D specific differentiator. Because we're tied, because our AI is tied specifically to the 3D asset, we're able to pass along information like where is the face, where is the hair, where are other accessories, and that information gets contained in the multi-layer Photoshop file that you can download, where you can apply even more controlled touch-ups to the pattern. Here you can see the cloth refinement in 3 different layers of control, and you can see another final AI render using iWish. Again, these are super hyper-realistic renders created directly out of Style3D. There's no other retouching done for these. These are done strictly out of the Style3D platform. Well, that wraps up our look at Style3D version 8. Every update is designed to make work faster, more precise, and more visually impressive, from enhanced pattern tools to better rendering and AI-powered features. If there are any remaining questions, we have about 5 minutes for QA. I'm going to pause after this. Otherwise, thanks for joining. Don't forget to subscribe to the Style3D YouTube channel for more updates and tutorials. And if you're interested in a demo or a free trial license, click the link in the description to get started. Looking forward to seeing what you can create with version 8.